Hello, welcome to the Parasha Study Parashat Teruma. Truth be told, in this week, Rashi transforms from somebody who's mifarish syntax in the Pisukim, to somebody who tries to give us life lessons from the Pisukim, and someone who tries to enhance the story as written in the Torah. This week, he transforms into an engineer. And most of Rashi's commentary is focused on helping one understand exactly how the Mishkan was constructed based off of the Pisukim. Additionally, he also transforms into a linguist, not so much dikduk-wise, but rather trying to explain why this word, why it's called what it is. This tool is called this word based off what concept, and he discussed a lot of linguistics of the Hebrew language in this week's parasha as well. We're going to focus on really the only thing that doesn't have to do with engineering or what name something is called, and we're going to focus on something very small. And that is, when it comes to Mizbah HaNehoshet, the Mizbeach that was placed outside in the courtyard of the Mishkan, upon which they would offer the sacrifices of the daily sacrifices, all the other animals that they would offer on the Mizbeach, Rashi has an interesting comment. The Torah teaches us that this Mizbeach is going to be covered in Nehoshet, in copper. Contrast to all the other kilim mentioned in this week's parasha, right? What this week's parasha does, it focuses on the construction of the Mishkan and the different utensils in the Mishkan, and all of them are made out of gold. They're covered with gold, or they're completely gold. The menorah, the shahan, the aron, the mizbeach inside, which is not mentioned in this week's parasha, and even the wooden beams are covered in gold that help support the mishkan. There's a lot of gold. All of a sudden, for the first time, we get to the mizbeach and the hoshet, and it's covered out of copper as opposed to gold. So why would we do this? Now, you could argue on a simple level that, wait a minute, there's a simple reason. The Mizbeach is outside of the Mishkan, and therefore it has less of a stature, therefore we're making it out of copper. However, if you think about it for a moment, and I think this is really what's bothering Rashi here, is that of all the kelim, the one that's most visible and the one that's most used is the Mizbeach. It's outside, therefore it's visible to everybody, and it's used multiple times a day, depending upon how much sacrifices are being brought that day, as opposed to the menorah. It's only used twice a day, and the Mizbeach HaKetoret as well, and the Shulchan is used essentially once a week. Here we have the Mizbeach. Everybody who brings a Qurban is going to use the Mizbeach. So therefore, why cover it in copper? And the Rashi says an interesting statement: Lechaper, to atone al azut mesach, on someone who was audacious and stubborn. Shneimad mishacha, your forehead. Nahusha was like copper, was strong-headed, and it's a rebuke to the people in which they weren't thinking about Hashem. The beginning of the pasuk actually states, "Midati ki kashe ata," you were difficult people, and therefore you didn't follow Hashem's ways properly. So now, all of a sudden, let's think about this for a moment. Let's pause here. We have the association of hard, of emboldened, brazen, like copper, in a pasuk in Yeshayahu. Therefore, Rashi says, okay, so let's connect it to the Mizbeach, that the Mizbeach is going to atone for somebody who was too brazen, like copper, and was too hard, was not able to take an assessment of himself and take a step back, and thus charged ahead. What does this idea have to do with the Mizbeach? And what I mean by that, by asking this following question, the question we just asked, is that most of the kelim, or the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, we're going to talk about how they atone for different things, but it makes sense. So, for instance, the seats, the hoshen, and mechaper, on things that correspond to where it is in the body. Here, okay, you tell me Nehosha, it's an oddity. So what do I find with Nehosha? What sin? And therefore there's a sense of atonement and some Mizbeach. This kind of makes sense, but why specifically? What is the connection of the Mizbeach to somebody who is brazen? And I would gather that the answer is that the Mizbeach is something in which causes a person to reflect. We're offering a Qurban on the Mizbeach. We're taking a Qurban, we're cutting it up, we're sacrificing it. There's a sense of loss of life. As the Midrash famously says, a person should be thinking, especially when a person sins, I should be the animal that's being offered on the Gabei Mizbeach, that I've sinned to Hashem, that there's a sense of, wait a minute, I really did something. We're talking about God here. I'm deserving of punishment. And instead, this animal is effectively replacing me. And therefore, we talk about the concept of Simichan or Korban, when one places his hands over the head of the Korban and confesses his sins. So therefore, it seems to be the Mizbeach of atonement helps a person take a step back. When a person is hard-headed, when a person is brazen, when a person is not thinking clearly and charging ahead, that's when they're going to sin. And the Mizbeach reminds us, oh, life could come to an end very easily. Don't just forge ahead. Take a step back and think about your actions. That's why the Mizbeach is covered in copper. And ultimately, I think this reflects a tremendous idea that we always try to say, that there's always something more to the symbolic act. There's always a reasons behind it. There's always subtlety in the actions that which we do, to not make it out of rote, but to make it offering sacrifices and thinking you're connecting to Hashem. There's a lesson meant to be imparted, and therefore think about the color of the Mizbeach. Why is it a different color? In order for you to learn your lesson. And I think that's really a beautiful message of what Judaism is trying to do, as Rashi highlights here on this pasuk. Have a good day and Shabbat Shalom.